Welcome back to Dark Corner Studios. My name is Aiden Wolf. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most important parts of your podcast, your recording equipment. Now, this one in specific, we're going to be focusing on the Zoom H5. Also, the Zoom H4n or the Zoom H6 work just as well. I would have to say with the Zoom H6, it does have a bit of a different layout to it. Although it's generally the same thing, I believe it has a color screen to it. Ooh, fancy. This one is the H5, much like the H6. It has a removable capsule, but for the most part, between the H4n, the H5, and the H6, you're going to get a comparable experience for sound quality. So let's go over exactly what you get out of this. This is Aiden Wolf. Now, one of the reasons you are going to want this microphone is portability and flexibility. You're not going to find a more portable recording device on the market. Some are cheaper, don't get me wrong, but the quality really isn't there. This is the go-to for on-the-go recording. You can record through an SD card, or you can actually use it as an interface into your computer. So you can literally unplug this from your computer and go and record on the road. This and two microphones, and you have a professional sounding podcast setup instantly. So starting out with the side profile, you can see you've got the hold and power button. This is basically a way to turn it on by holding this button down. This can also be pushed up so you can't make any changes while you're recording, which is actually a lot more handy than you might think. Beside that is a DC 5-volt USB. You can power this unit with this. This is also the way to hook it up to your computer to be used as an interface. Also, it can be used for transferring files and whatever you need. Beside that, you've got a volume button for volume up and down, and you have a line out and some headphones here. On the front of the unit, it's pretty simple. You've got a back and forward button. You've got a stop. You've got a play pause. And you've got a record button. Up here, you've got your left and right channels. Now, what those are going to be controlling are the XY microphones that are up at the top of the unit here. Now, this left, right, they cannot be separated. So they're either both on or both off. There you go. They're both off. I'm pushing the volume button. And now they're both on. They're either on or off, both. You cannot choose one channel over the other. 1 and 2 are actually used to control these two XLR inputs on the bottom. Now, along with that, you also have volume controls for 1 and 2. You can see the 1 and the 2 up here. Now, what these are for is volume control on those two XLR inputs, 1 and 2. As you can see right here, 1 and 2. Now, you also get to the screen, which is a pretty straightforward screen that shows 4 bars if you've got all 4 channels working at the exact same time. At the top here, you can see the left and right, both picking up my voice on the XY mics up top. 1 and 2 are down here at the bottom. So if I actually had a microphone plugged in right now, you'd be able to see the channel 1 and channel 2 if microphones were in. Now, this can also tell you whether or not you're peaking. So the louder it gets, you can see it's getting close to peaking by tapping on the microphone at the top. And this is basically where you can see all the time of record and telling you exactly what's armed, also your battery, and the type of file that you're recording. Up at the top, you actually have volume control for your XY mics. And of course, at the top, you have your XY mics. Now, the great thing about the Zoom H5 is this capsule. This capsule comes off the H5 and can be replaced by other types of capsules, but this also helps out if you don't want it damaged during transport, or maybe you just don't want the added weight on your Zoom. So this is the Zoom. You can see where it plugs in at the top. The different capsules you can actually get for the Zoom H5 include shotgun. They've got also another type of microphone that's kind of an omni mic. And then you also have the ability to plug in 2 extra XLR ports at the top here. So if you wanted to have 4 microphones going all at the same time, you can actually do that by just removing this XY stereo mic. Now we're going to swing it around and we're going to come around to this side. Of course, you have your SD reader at the bottom here. You also have a menu button that can take you through all the menu options. This is a clicker up and down, and you can also click it in. And remote, so these things do come with remotes in the Plus package, which will allow you to operate it from a distance with a wired remote. It's not the best option, but if you're sitting far enough away from your Zoom H5, it does actually make it easier than having to get up and hit that record button. And of course, on the side of the XY mics, you have another input. This will actually, if you have a cell phone out into here, you can actually record cell phone audio through this jack. And all it does is it just takes over the XY mic channel, and you can control that up top with this little volume control. When you go into the on-screen controls, you can decide what you want to do with each individual project. You can also decide what to do with your folders, how it's saved, folder 1 through folder, I believe, 10. This is your input and output. So here you actually have some built-in effects that I've never personally used because I usually do a lot of this stuff through Adobe Audition, but you've got a low-cut filter. If you live on a busy road, this low-cut filter will come in handy. Compression limiter. You've got phantom power for 1 and 2. That would be for these two inputs right here. I believe you can only have phantom power for 1 and 2 if you put 2 extra XLR mics by capsule up here. I don't think you can use phantom power for those. Plug-in power, this allows you to actually use the plug-in as a power rather than a transfer. And you can also pad your 1 and 2. And the in12 MS Matrix is more for instrumentation. This is your side level and such. So you really won't be needing that. And if you're interested in learning about the 1.2 MS Matrix on this, there's a ton of YouTube videos out there for that kind of stuff. This is also your raw monitor and your monitor mixer. So you can actually see the actual monitor mixer while you're doing it. And line out level. So if you're going to be recording off this through a camera, if you're going to put this up to be recording out to something, you'll want to set this so the value isn't too high, so it's not blowing out whatever you're recording into. Very, very important. And that's about it for the menu options. Now, one of the things the H5 is best at is multi-track recording. And that's specifically important when you have more than one person on mic at any given time, or even a computer feed. Maybe you're interviewing somebody over a computer. You can keep those files split. So one person's on one file, another person's on the other. That becomes particularly important when one person's a gabber and you want to cut out parts of their conversation. Maybe they're talking over you. Now, this also allows you to add in post-production different values to equalization, maybe a limiter on one person's mic because maybe they're a heavy breather, or maybe one of the members of your podcast has some mouth noises that you want to eliminate, but you don't want to affect everyone else's audio. Having a multi-track recorder is one of the best things you can do. Probably the greatest thing that I've ever used on it is the ability to put markers into your audio. Well, let me show you this. Right here on the side, I showed you this little button that it can either be used to go back and forth, or it can be pressed in. If you're recording and something happens where you need to actually mark the audio, all you have to do is press this button and a marker will be placed in the audio at that point. So if you're running a podcast and maybe you just want to mark certain sections out, this will clean up your podcast editing time by a large margin. Now, the setup is really, really simple. All you need to do is plug mics into the bottom of this. Once those mics are in, you select on the side 1 or 2, depending on how many mics you have. And you can also take off the left and right. So you set it up for 2 mics and you have an instant 2 microphone option for a podcast. Now, once you have those plugged in, you can either choose to record through the SD card. You just literally hit the record button. Now, you're live and you can actually see it counting as it's recording this file. And I'm putting markers in already. See, you press the button to the side and you get markers in your audio. Anyways, that's it. You hit record, make sure you have your lines selected, which is these buttons along here. Okay, that's it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed this trip down how to use a Zoom H5. I would suggest, if you're planning on getting one of these, check out your used market. I've never actually bought one of these brand new. They've always come used for me. This one I got for 250 Canadian, which I think conversion to American is $5. If you can find these used, you can get them quite cheap. I know here a brand new one goes for about 400. And for the most part, the most people that are using these are podcasters that have decided to quit, or filmmakers, because these things make great audio capture for film cameras or DSLRs. Thanks for joining me. Have yourself a great night, and we'll see you next week.